number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 353, Sports Card Nation. John Newman, glad to be back. Got a guest on today. It's been on the show, but it's been a while, and always a pleasure getting to talk to him, chop up the hobby. He has his own podcast that's doing super well, and full-time in the hobby now between that and other things. And so Brett McGrath is our guest from Stacking Slabs on today's program. Before we get started, kudos to all our great sponsors, for without them, this show doesn't happen. So Iron Sports Cards, Sports Collectors Digest, Hobby Hotline, and Upper Deck. And great to have them part of the Sports Card Nation family. So with that out of the way, let's get to talking with Brett McGrath of Stacking Slabs. All right, happy to have this next gentleman on the Sports Card Nation guest line. He's been a part of this program before, but it's been a couple years. And I tell you the truth, I didn't even realize it till I kind of looked it up, and much too long. So time to have him back on, and great guy doing great content in his own right. Brett McGrath of Stacking Slabs. Welcome back.
John, thanks for having me. Time flies when you're having fun. Even though it's been a couple years, I definitely tune into Sports Card Nation and enjoy all the conversations you have, especially when Dr. Beckett's on. I always find his insight always gives me something new to think about. But what I like about this is you were doing this before I started, and you're still doing it now. And I love not only creators being here and creating and sharing thoughts and their opinions and bringing on guests, but just the longevity and consistency. So Sports Card Nation's been an institution for quite a while, and glad to be a part of it today.
Well, thank you. And that's just another way of saying I'm old. And you're right. I can't deny it. My birth certificate gives me away. No, I appreciate it. All joking aside. And you're right. Whenever I have Dr. Jim on, and I've known him a while, and he's a friend, and I know you know him. It's he makes you think. He sees it from a different angle, and he's like, after I talk with him, I'm like, how come that was like, you made that seem so easy? How come I didn't? Like, you almost kind of second guess yourself. But that's just he's done this a long time. He's a brilliant guy, and that's just the genius of Dr. Jim. And so, yeah, no doubt. That's why he's a great guest, right? Is because he makes you look at it from a different perspective. And listen, you likewise, right? You're very intelligent. You've been in this. You're not new to the hobby. Like you said, you started after me. It wasn't like that far after me. So you're in that OG category as well. And that category there's a lot of shows now compared to 4-6 years ago when we started and whatnot. Well, we'll start off there, Brett. Like, is that good? Is that bad? Is it'll just shake itself out? Will people just listen to shows they enjoy and the proof sort of in the pudding? Is that really is as simple as that?
I think I often say this, like, I create a lot of content and have a ton of conversations, as do you, John, and share those out publicly and just go through this cycle of constantly doing it. But on the other side of it, I'm probably just as big of a consumer of content in the hobby. I go on a lot of walks, run, and I'm always listening to hobby podcasts. And I'll tell you this, like, I'll listen to other podcasts outside of hobby podcasts, but when there are new hobby podcasts available, they're always the ones that I want to listen to first. And I just think, like, the diversity of voices, opinions, different flavors of the hobby, like, even if it's something that I don't do or don't collect and someone's covering it on the podcast, I try to listen because it makes me more informed. And so I think what I've noticed over this stretch of, talking into a microphone to collectors for so long is that a lot of people will start projects, but it's really hard to keep them going. And I think the creators that continue to keep their podcast going have a passion, and usually that passion shines through. So I always encourage any listeners, like if you have a unique angle or something you want to talk about, like start a podcast, and I'll listen to it. I'll definitely listen to it. But yeah, it's, as you know, it's not easy to keep the ship going for a long time, but yeah, it's been fun, and always appreciate new shows to listen to.
Yeah, well said. And I was saying, you look at yourself and you look at myself, who's doing more running and more walking. That's more apparent, and listening to probably more content because of that. So, but no, it's there's just so much. The hobby's just so diverse as well, like you said, that there is room for content that's kind of being done different. And I've stayed sort of true. I've changed things here and there. I talked to you even before we went live and told you, we went even double episodes here with guests instead of one big long one, just from listener feedback, and just for my schedule too. To full transparency, it's made kind of my job. I don't even want to say job, but made my life a little bit easier in kind of scheduling these out and getting folks on. But yeah, it's no matter what you collect, there's probably a show that pertains to it. And I want to segue into a part of the hobby you're a part of and very familiar with, and that's the wrestling hobby and wrestling in general, right? I had about a month ago, Drake Magruder, a friend of yours, on. I had Adam Gelman on in the past. And the one thing I even though I'm not a wrestling card guy, you don't have to be to see how tight-knit that community and how passionate that community is. I'd even say, like, I don't know if you agree with it. I know it's a smaller segment, but they seem even closer than other sports hobby. I guess two-pronged, right? Am I right? And what do you attest that to?
I think there's a nature of it's kind of like a startup category in a way, and when you're forming and you're growing, you tend to know everybody or most people, and you know what the types of cards or wrestlers or products that those collectors in the community collect, and there's a sense of wanting to help those individuals out. I'm not gonna there's competition, right? There's competition in other categories, but I think the shared passion, which for many wrestling card collectors comes from childhood, is something that people are able to connect on. I'll also say, you mentioned Gelman, like there's individuals in the space who've been organizers, and sometimes it takes individuals who are super passionate and have a voice and want to create content. And I think like we are in this era where we're moving towards like more focus in niche content for specific categories. And Gelman has really been the leader of that for the wrestling card community. I'm a member of his Patreon group, Main Event, and I get an email regularly that new article, new conversation, whatever is put out there. But I know Gelman pretty well, and Gelman is super passionate, and he wants to share information, and that information coming from manufacturers, information coming from people he's talking with. And so I just think what I like about the wrestling card community is there's just always a flood of information, always information about sales and where cards are, what's available. And yeah, as you expand and categories grow, it gets harder and harder to operate that like that. But I think that's what a cool part is about wrestling cards in the community around it right now.
Yeah, and I think you tell me if you agree with this too, Brett. Like even with sports cards, obviously now sports cards and the hobby, it's making mainstream news at record clips, especially the last few years, especially since COVID. At one point you were probably wrong. It wasn't really as cool to be in the hobby as it is, let's say, today. People were reluctant to even say, hey, I collect baseball cards or football cards, whatever. And I think even with wrestling cards, there was that stigma, whether it was right or wrong. But now I think just with the explosion of everything else, Listen, no one's denying how popular wrestling is. You see the sold out arenas and the pay-per-views. But I think too, it's there was sort of a bugaboo, like if someone knew, like, oh, you collect cards. I think we're way past that point. But I think because we're way past that point, it makes it easier to do, and that tighter. And I think maybe because that community remembers when it wasn't like it is now, and how it was a little more like you kind of kept it behind closed doors or yourself. That maybe that factors in there too.
Yeah, those individuals who were collecting cards when they weren't cool, and especially collecting wrestling cards when they weren't cool, and have been here the whole time, are certainly probably doing pretty well for themselves. Because that category is grown, right? New people coming in, passion being shared. You've got the Netflix deal with WWE. You've obviously got Topps coming in, grabbing the license, which adds a whole nother marketing element to everything. New eyeballs. It's been growing quickly in real time. I'll tell you, I went to WrestleMania in Vegas this year with my best friend. We met when we were 3 or 4 years old, playing with wrestling figures at our brother's YMCA basketball game. Still friends today, best friends, still talk about wrestling all the time. But we got the hall pass from our wives that, we both turned 40 this year. And it was like, all right, we're going to go to Vegas and be,
young bucks. You're still young bucks at 40.
Over the hill, but I'll take it, John. But yeah, we went there, and we went to WWE Access and went through and did it all. And I'll tell you what, man, everywhere you turned were wrestling cards, promotion of Topps Chrome. We walked into Allegiant, where the Raiders play, where the event was. And right when I walked in, there was a huge cardboard cutout of a Topps Chrome autograph Rhea Ripley card. And I look around, and there's just promo for cards everywhere. Now, I've been going to wrestling events my entire life. I've never seen anything like that. So part of the growth, right, is people sharing information and people passionate and community organizers like Gelman. But then it's also like you've got a manufacturer who's like going all in on the promotion of new products and exposure to an audience. And what's crazy about wrestling fans is wrestling fans aren't scared of spending money. They'll spend money on tickets, t-shirts, memorabilia, action figures, but cards have never really been a part of that. And now they very much are. And it's fun to see it getting going.
Yeah. And it's important, I think, too, for the sport itself to embrace the hobby, because I think they have to, they're not mutually exclusive. I think they need each other, or at least, the hobby needs wrestling, maybe more so, but, the more people who are into the hobby, the more fans you're going to have.
Time for a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
Sports Card Nation has returned.
When I had Gelman on, I talked about this, like, does the sport itself do enough to promote the fact that, because you mentioned, I'd love to see, when you go to a wrestling event, you come through the door and you get a promo pack of some sort. And I would venture a guess, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, Brett, there's people going to get this promo pack who probably don't even realize they're actually wrestling cards. Maybe they're buying the shirts and the memorabilia and that sort of thing, or the belts and stuff. They don't even realize they're trading cards, and that might be their avenue to know that they exist. And here we have a new wrestling card hobbyist, right? And what's that take, right? It doesn't, I know there's printing and stuff like that, but just think about what, a kid walks through, he's already excited. He's going to watch some of his favorite wrestlers probably perform live in front of him rather than on TV. And then he's handed a pack and maybe doesn't even know cards exist. And I mentioned the kids, but this could be adults as well. Kind of your thoughts on maybe seeing some more of that.
Yeah, I think we will see more of that just based on my observations of how Topps is operating right now. One of the things that I noticed was, they dropped the Cactus Jack version of Topps Chrome while we were at WrestleMania. You could buy it at the show and you could resell it the online for multiples. So like there's that element too of like people like immediately flipping wrestling cards, but it just adds a whole nother element. I think in terms of exposure, one of the things that just like blew my mind seeing this for the first time, but I was like sitting on my couch, I was watching Raw on Netflix, and this was like a few months ago, but they were doing like a matchup. They're like highlighting the main event or the next matchup, and I remember vividly, like one of the performers was Damian Priest, and I can't remember who he was wrestling against, but they showed the matchup as they segued to the commercial, and they were highlighting them in cardboard form. It was like their Topps Chrome cards on the screen, and I was like, that's a pretty cool way to promote the product, like during the show as a part of the show. And so I think in this era of WWE, they're definitely more open to sponsors than they were in a previous era. And I think it's a good opportunity for wrestling cards to get more eyeballs.
Yeah, and I think the Fanatics / Topps brand, that's kind of, they do a good job of promoting themselves and what they've gotten the license for. Do you think it's as simple as that, where maybe a prior card company just kind of failed in that department, and maybe it hurt? Maybe that's why they don't have the license anymore. I hate to make it as black and white as that, but you almost have to.
Yeah, I what I can say is that whether you like what they're doing or you don't like what they're doing, the approach that Fanatics / Topps is taking to get attention has never been seen before, and it works in this era of being online, scrolling. It's the way they're approaching influencers, the way they're approaching getting each product line out. Events like Fanatics Fest is something like we haven't seen before. So if you're a company like WWE and they're talking about all this new modern ways to promote and involving talent and using digital channels and different strategies and using influencers, like if your chances are that's probably going to be appetizing for those decision makers. And I couldn't begin to tell you how all those deals went down and why they went down, but Fanatics is a marketing machine. They're a marketing company, and they promised they were going to do that, and they're delivering on that. At least I've been seeing that in the wrestling card category. Yeah,
no doubt. And I'm not even a wrestling guy per se, Brett, and yet I'm picking that up. So what's that tell you?
There you go.
I've seen some promos for matches, and like you said, they're using the wrestlers on the cards as part of that promo for that match. And maybe as simple as that, someone says, hey, that's a card. Like, who get those? Who makes them? How do I obtain them? That sort of thing. It's I know it's not as simple as that, but something as simple as that can bring a whole bunch of new hobbyists into the fold. And I don't know if you agree. I'm assuming that the wrestling hobby is going to grow as a result of the Fanatics / Topps influence.
I would imagine so. And one thing that I'll just call out that I've noticed, that just to tell the listeners where this is right now in terms of the promotion side. I've observed this, whenever there's a new product to be opened, you have Triple H, Icon, WWE Hall of Famer, Chief Creative Officer, the guy in charge of the product right now. They do a video of him and Sam Roberts, who's he's got a wrestling podcast, but Triple H just is sitting there opening up the packs and they're talking about the cards. And it's like, that never would have been done under the Vince McMahon era. And I just think it's like, that content's probably not for everyone, but if you're a kid and you're watching wrestling and you collect cards and never have connected the dots, and you see a video of Triple H opening up the new Topps Chrome pack, like, it's probably going to get your attention. So I think those sorts of tactics they're employing right now. And I think, we're talking about them on a podcast. So they're doing something right.
Yeah, and I'm not a wrestling guy, and I have nothing against it. I'm just it's not my lane, right? And like you just said, we're both talking about it. So, and I've had even more people on the show to talk about it, and that's saying something right there. All right, so we'll put a little bow on wrestling as it's about to grow even more. Let's talk about your content, stacking slabs. Like you said, I know you said you're after me. I don't look at it like that. I look at it like we're all in the fraternity, right? We all can't graduate the same year, and if the graduation's earlier, it just means I'm older and I'm getting older quicker. Again, we've seen it change, but even your cuts changed. I don't know when. I'll kind of put you, not really on the spot, but you're now full time in the hobby, which is awesome. Kind of talk about that progression, how tough of a decision, or maybe not, to do that. Any nervousness to, anytime I think anyone I've talked to who's done that, Brett, always said, yeah, it is, it's a little unknown, like it's known and unknown, and you worry about it. But every story is unique, and every journey is unique. Kind of for you, kind of talk how you got there and the thoughts about doing it.
Yeah, I'll give the brief overview. So I spent previously the last 15 years of my career working in B2B marketing, mostly for software companies, in a marketing function, and worked for companies all shapes and sizes. But throughout that experience, I did I did marketing, and I did content, and I built brands, and I did podcasting. I did a lot of brand building. And during COVID, I got really bored and was working from home, and thought, I could take what I'm doing professionally and apply it to the hobby. And was really the genesis of Stacking Slabs. Is like, I was bored. I just wanted to meet other collectors who've been doing it longer than me, and maybe we can create some content along the way. That turned into a 4-year passion project. And it's like, it's like, once you start and you're really into it, you can't really stop. And while I was working, it felt like, kind of 2 jobs at once. And then 2024, I was working for a startup that I put 3 years in, and it ran out of funding, and I lost my job. So it was like the first time in my career I did not have a job, and I had to figure out what I wanted to do. And really my mindset was around, well, I'm spending all this time with Stacking Slabs and the content, and I made all these connections. Like, what can I do in order to set myself up and be able to do this full time? During that time, as I was plotting, meeting with people, trying to figure out the path, I took a contractor job. And then that contractor job, I didn't want it to, but it ended up becoming a full-time gig while I'm trying to run Stacking Slabs and take it off the ground and do it full time. And then it just reached this crossroads. It was okay, well, I've made enough of the right connections, and financially, I think I'm in a position to be able to make this happen. Luckily, because I've got an awesome audience and some great sponsors. And I talked to my wife in November of last year, and she said, go do it. And next day I got on and talked to my CEO, and felt like maybe blindsided him a little bit, but I left and really never looked back. And so I've been, working for myself, building out Stacking Slabs since November of 2024, and I haven't looked back. I can't tell you how fortunate I feel every day that I can wake up after I take my kids to school and come back to the desk and have just an endless amount of content and things to work on, all hobby related. And I feel very fortunate, and it feels very much like I'm just getting started. This year we have expanded. We've almost got a new show coming out every day. We're starting new shows, niche, folk category specific. WNBA Card Podcast is one of them that's launched. We just launched the Football Card Podcast. We're working with shows with sponsors, and so there's it's the work it's never ending. It's never ending. There's formatting. There's the outreach to have these conversations. There's the conversations, and then it's do it all over again. I was looking at my calendar, John, for tomorrow, and I have a mini little vacation with my family, which I haven't taken a vacation in forever, with my family right before the National. And I just looked and I have 4 recordings all in a row tomorrow. And I'm just like, this is what I signed up for, but I love it. So I feel very fortunate. It's the best. This is the best. I've had many jobs and I've worked for many awesome companies, many great people. This is easily the best job I've ever had.
Yeah, and you love it. You're passionate about it. I know we throw that word around sometimes too easy, right? Love or passionate, but when you really do, right, it comes through. I think it comes through in your content. I know I get that from you. It's not, there's no phoniness there. It's genuine. You can tell sometimes, when someone's sort of going through the motions. Someone asked me, Brett, like, John, when will you know, like, your podcast is like you're done? Like, and it's a real simple answer. I didn't even have to think about it. When I turn on the mic and I don't want to, or it's not fun anymore, or I look at it as like, I'm in the teaching profession by day now, and I love that gig. I'm not going to give it up, even though I probably could with like you with the hobby side. But I love the kids. But if I ever turn, like, it's like, even knowing, hey, I'm going to come home and I'm going to have a great conversation, most likely with Brett. Like, I look forward to that. And I don't foresee this, but hypothetically, if I would have been thinking like, oh man, I got to talk to Brett, I'd rather jump in my hot tub.
Yeah.
If I get to that point, like, and I get sometimes it might be a day, you're just having an off day, like an athlete, right? I went 0 for 4. But if that becomes more like the norm, which I don't ever see that happening. But if it did, that's when I know. And I always tell, when I get asked that question, Brett, I always say, I have nothing to do with downloads. When I started this show, it wasn't sponsored. It was slow going at first, and then it just sort of built up. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I never did the show to make money. That's what's become a nice perk of it, but it's still not the real reason. Like, if that even went away now, even after getting used to it, I still would do the show. It's more the internal feeling that, like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I don't want to have this conversation, or I rather do this than that. And if that ever happens again, I don't foresee that. But if that became the happenstance or the circumstance, then that's all I need. I'll know then. And it'll have nothing to do with all the superficial and financial aspects. Always awesome having Brett on the program. And here's the best part. This was only part 1. So part 2 will continue next week, our conclusion with Brett McGrath. And hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed the conversation I had with Brett. And again, conclusion part 2. Next Friday. All right, before we close out the show here with some closing thoughts, I don't often bring in like outside the hobby stuff into this program, but unless you're living under a rock, this week was a particularly difficult one living here in this country, with some incidents and killings that were senseless, terrible, tragic, and makes me very sad to see it. I pray for families affected by these tragedies. I pray for everybody, because we all should be affected by these tragedies. That you could just be minding your own business somewhere and still be killed. That you may give your opinion of your beliefs and it may cost your life. And it's sad to say, but that's sort of where we are. I still believe there's more good than bad in this world, just like I believe there's more good than bad in this hobby. But I pray for everybody to get through these difficult times, and I pray that hopefully these stories are less prevalent than they have seemed to become. So we're going to close out the show with some more closing thoughts and wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
Hello, this is Mark Hoyle, hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.